My definition of greatness in the moment is trying to be just a little bit better, inch by inch, millimeter by millimeter, whether it's the next day or the next week, and not beating yourself up about it. If you fail for an entire week, for an entire month, just get up and sort of brush the dirt off and get back to it. It's not a straight line. It's a very jagged, intimidating, and I think people should keep in mind that whether it's the biggest names you can imagine, the billionaires and the icons and the rock stars, all of these people have self-doubt. They have moments where they want to give it all up and quit and just sleep under the covers and not get out of bed for the day. So my definition of greatness is recognizing that's part of the human condition. You're not a failure if you feel that way. And it's very intimidating, and I don't think that goes away. But it's not overcoming your fears all the time. It's facing your fears. Having taken the leap of faith to at least stand up and face your fears, I think is my definition of greatness. Best investment I've made in myself would be any time I schedule and record workouts consistently. That is just the scaffolding that allows me to do everything else more effectively. Wow. So anytime I get serious about training, all the other pieces fall into place. But despite that fact, it's very easy for, I think, everyone to drop that hat as soon as things get a little hectic. They're like, no,
I don't have time to work out.
Exactly, which is it's completely the most counterproductive decision to make, yet it is a sin that I commit repeatedly. So I have to, but I do catch myself, and that would be an incredible investment. Anytime that I do that, having a system for determining progress or lack thereof, planning, etc., it just gives me positive feedback in a very concrete way that compels me to continue doing it. And I also think that exercise allows you to diversify your identity a bit. So what I mean by that is, if you have all of your eggs in the one basket that is the book you're working on, or the startup you're working on, or fill in the blank,
or your family,
or your family.
Whatever,
if you have all of your eggs in one basket, if anything takes a turn for the worse, it could be for factors outside of your control, you can become depressed, and your self-esteem can take a huge hit. You can feel like a failure. I find it helpful not to scatter your focus, but to have a couple of buckets or baskets, maybe even two, but where if you have a good day or a good week in the gym, and you know it's good because you've been tracking it and you put 15 pounds in your deadlift or whatever it might be, even if other things go sideways, you can feel like you succeeded for that week.
Yeah, I like that.
But it's the point of the show. I mean, the premise is that you don't need to be superhuman to get superhuman results. You just need a better toolkit. So I wanted people to see in real time, not just in retrospect. Because the 4 Hour Body, it's like I do this stuff for months and years, and then I write about it after the fact. This is where people get to see in real time, like, how am I adapting? It's like, if I tear my arm and I can't use my left arm for something, and then I have to do a drumming episode, like, what do I do? How do I adapt? What do I jury rig together, MacGyver style? The most important lesson I've learned, and repeatedly learn, is that setting expectations. So whether you're dealing with someone who's more, say, artistic and less operational, someone who's operational and less creative, or chooses to be less creative, right? Because they're interested in the execution of very ambitious plans.
Right.
Whether you're dealing with a left brain person, a right brain person, or someone who has a different Myers-Briggs, making sure that the expectations, if it's a professional relationship, sort of the goals are agreed upon, the methods are agreed upon, what decisions they can make autonomously are agreed upon, how progress is going to be measured. I choose to believe because I find it helpful for me rebounding from challenges in life and for making moral decisions. So I tend to believe that what goes around comes around, and if you do good things will return to you. You do bad things will return to you. But those are hard to empirically prove. And as someone who's spent so much time in the world of science, and science is really just a regimented way of testing your own assumptions, It's not sterile. It's a way of thinking that I find very helpful for avoiding confusion and delusion. Spending a lot of time alone gives you time to meditate on the good and the bad, and I think in excess, isolation can be detrimental and poisonous. You just end up chasing your own tail a lot or beating yourself up. So in lieu of having other people beat me up, I would beat myself up. Why wasn't I stronger? Why wasn't I faster? Why wasn't I bigger? Why couldn't I go out and stand up for myself, etc. And eventually wrestling was a huge tool that allowed me to overcome some of those types of self-doubt. Consistent morning practice before taking my phone off of airplane mode of sitting and doing a meditative practice for, say, 20 minutes. And it stuck initially by taking a transcendental meditation class of perhaps 3 days when I was going through very, very difficult times. The way I'd encourage people to think about meditation, because it can sound very woo-woo, and I certainly was repelled by it for a long time, is you are sitting down, say on a couch, to practice observing your thoughts and feelings and emotions for a very short period of time so that for the rest of the day, you are less emotionally reactive. What this means is you are rehearsing, you are training. It's like going to the gym. So let's say you're training for a sport, all right? So you're an athlete in X, you go to the gym to do squats, to do this, this, and this, so that when you get on the playing field, you can perform better. It is exactly the same. You're rehearsing and training for your day. And then when you run into something that normally would trigger you, whether that's a certain type of email, whether that's an employee who has a habit that drives you insane, or you being behind in your schedule and then the line at Starbucks is longer than you would like, whatever it happens to be, the things that would normally cause you to get really tightly wound or explode or berate yourself or other people, you will then start to spot before you have the reaction. And then you say, okay, the half a second of breathing, let me choose my response. Instead of being held hostage to these loops and triggers that we all have. So that has been enormously helpful for me. And there are many different entry points. I mentioned TM, that's one way, it's not the only way. Headspace, I think, is a fantastic option for people, the 10 minutes a day for 10 days, which is free. Or you could listen to a guided meditation. There are many good ones out there. Sam Harris, who's also in here, has some fantastic guided meditations. Tara Brach also has some really hypnotic, awesome guided meditation. The most important exercise that I do still to this day, I would say at least once a quarter, is something called fear setting. And it's intended to help you overcome or at least analyze the fears you have so that you can take important steps in different directions. Start new projects, end projects, start relationships, end relationships. Make those very seemingly difficult decisions for which there is no good timing. So if you're considering, say, quitting your job, you might look at all of the various worst case scenarios, the terrible things that could happen and how to offset them, right? So you make a list defining all of the specific things that could happen that would be bad, that would cause you some type of anxiety, depression, fear, etc., whatever it might be, loss. What you might do, though, instead, since that might be very obvious, is to write down a similar list in detail, the specificity is important, of all of the things that it will cost you, all of the things that will happen if you don't change, if you stay in your job. So if you stay, for instance, in that relationship, if you telescope out, and I recommend telescoping out and doing it for different time frames. All right, so in 6 months, if you don't change anything, what will it cost you? Make a list.